Hey folks, welcome back. So recently I did my massive feature-length review of 11 cuboids, and I've now solved all of them except for the 3x4x5, which is next on the list. But I wanted to give a little update on two puzzles in particular, just in case any of you were thinking about getting these for your collections. And that's the mf8 2x3x4 and the IE 5x5x4, which you'll notice is now stickered inside the box there. So first I'll talk about the 2x3x4. Now this is unfortunately a bit of a negative outcome. I did enjoy solving this. It was surprisingly significantly easier than I thought it would be. I was expecting to be really stumped by this for a while, but actually the shape-shifting is really easy to resolve, and the rest of the puzzle, there was a bit of a parity algorithm I had to find to deal with these kind of center edge wings, I guess these would be, and just being able to three-cycle those around to finish off the puzzle. But it was, in general, pretty straightforward except for that. However, the problem is that it does turn significantly worse than I had felt in the beginning. So when you're just playing with it sort of idly, it's a little bit sticky, a little bit catchy, but not anything too terrible. But what you will find is that you can end up in situations where, if you can see here, so this piece is sticking out slightly, and it's always that piece. And then what happens is the entire puzzle stops turning. Okay, so when that is sticking up, it looks like I should be able to do turns, but nothing turns at all. And the only way to resolve it is to turn this a bit until that clicks back into place, and then suddenly everything works again. So it's not the end of the world. I've had puzzles with worse habits than that, but I really wanted to highlight that just quickly because I don't know if every 2x3x4 from mf8 will have that problem, but I did find it pretty annoying. Because when you're trying to flow your way through a solve and figure out what you need to do next, and you end up with that kind of monstrosity happening to you and sort of getting in your way for the next step of the solve, it is pretty annoying. I do think that probably there's some way to resolve it, maybe if I mess with the tensions, or there may be something going wrong with an internal piece somewhere. But I'm not super keen to disassemble this. I think it'd probably be a bit annoying to reassemble this kind of puzzle. I'm not entirely sure. But I just wanted to highlight that for you because I do think it's something to be aware of. You know, again, it can be resolved just by wiggling that layer again back into place. But you know, just be careful. That's all I'm saying. So that's the mf8 2x3x4. Unfortunately, not quite as good as I initially hoped. I'm hoping the 3x4x5 will prove to live up to my first impressions a little bit better. But I still honestly would recommend this puzzle. It was enjoyable to solve. Like I said, I was surprised that I got it pretty quickly on the first attempt. And I did it a bunch more times to make sure it wasn't a fluke, of course. And I made sure to scramble it as well as I possibly could, you know, by scrambling it first as a 2x3x4 and then doing shape-shifting stuff like this. But it was enjoyable. I did like having a puzzle that is a little bit of a step beyond the complexity of a 2x2x3 or something like that. So there's a lot more to the solve than that puzzle. But, you know, it's not intimidating and it doesn't take a huge amount of time. So it's a really nice one to have in the collection. Also, it only costs $8. So, you know, not too shabby as far as that goes. So, yeah, just be aware that you may have that issue where something will go wrong with the internal alignment, and you need to sort of wiggle it a bit to get everything to settle before you do the next turns. So that's all you need to know, really. Now, my nemesis, the 5x5x4. So in my review video, if you've watched it, hopefully, you'll see that I really strongly dislike this puzzle. Out of the box, it just turned extremely terribly. The layers are super crunchy. The centers would sort of work themselves out and pop, and it was just a bad experience. So I didn't even sticker it until I would be able to look at it and try to fix it as much as I could. And I've done that, and I want to tell you that it's still terrible. So you can see that, you know, it's actually turnable now. What I've done is I managed to fix the tensions up a bit. So what you need to do is a little bit awkward because essentially you need to pop out these side centers here. Hopefully I can do this without them flying all over the room. Let's see. If I grab a screwdriver here, I can show you how that works. So what you do is you pop out these guys, if they will agree to pop out. There we go. And this one, like so. And then these two pieces here seem to be attached to the core, right? So the only way to get at the screws you need to adjust the tensions on these side layers is by rotating the puzzle like this, and then the screw appears underneath. And you have to take your screwdriver and kind of shove it in forcefully, enough so that you push this center out of the way, and then you can adjust the tensions. Now, what I had to do was I adjusted all the sides, all 6 of them as well, and turn them looser by about a quarter turn. I initially tried to do a half turn, and what happened was that the puzzle was so loose just from that small adjustment that these side centers were falling out all the time, and it was really annoying. So I went back in, changed them again, and ended up settling on a quarter turn as kind of the closest I could get to smoothness without it becoming too loose. But unfortunately, while some of the slice layers now turn significantly better than they did initially, there's still a heck of a lot of crunchiness and stickiness. You can see there's just a ton of catchiness there where your turns will just sort of stop dead. And also, when you loosen it up, you really start to see that the puzzle is quite poorly constructed. So you can see that when it's just lying in repose here, these pieces are wobbling all over the place, and everything kind of sags, and it just looks a bit sad. It's just not a very well-made puzzle, ultimately. It is solvable. I have solved it now. And as a puzzle, it actually was really enjoyable. I have to say that. I certainly wouldn't deny that I did enjoy the solving process, but the actual working with the puzzle during the solve was not enjoyable, really. It certainly was doable. And like I said, I have puzzles that are pretty bad, and this is probably now not as bad as something like the Voidmaster Pentultimate, for example, which I still haven't scrambled and solved because it's not fun to use at all. This one, you can get it to the point where it's usable if you do adjust the tensions, and I did put some lube in it as well. I haven't gone through and sanded off all the parts because, I really didn't want to disassemble the whole thing. I may do that at some stage, but mainly I just wanted to get it to a point where I felt like, I could feasibly actually solve it. And you can see that, when it's feeling cooperative, you can finger trick it. It's okay. But it's just a poorly constructed piece of puzzle here. So I really, again, wouldn't recommend that you spend $34 or whatever it was on this puzzle. It catches too much. You have to make these adjustments yourself. And actually, at first I thought I might not be able to adjust the tensions because whatever machine or man had sort of constructed the puzzle had turned the screws so incredibly tightly that they were completely stripped. So it was actually quite hard on some of the faces to turn the screws and adjust the tensions because the screwdriver just didn't have any purchase. In particular, the top and bottom faces were like that. The side ones were not quite so bad, but still they were a bit stripped. But the top and bottom were really, really stripped. The inner part of the screw was just smooth, basically. So that wasn't great either. So yeah, it's functional now, but I'd still say that it's not worth the money, unfortunately. If you can get some alternative option, maybe some 3D printed extensions, there's a few places that I've spotted recently that are doing sort of pre-assembled puzzles that are based on 3D printed extensions. Or you could get a hand-modded puzzle from Trifoom or something like that for your 5x5x4 fix. I would save up your money and do that because whatever you're going to get will feel that it's worth it. And this doesn't feel that it's worth it, even though it is cheaper. However, maybe you're a puzzle modder and you can turn this into something usable. I don't know. And if so, Godspeed. I wish you the best. But yeah, I'm still not very happy with this puzzle. And the 4x4x5, honestly, is better than this, but not by a whole heck of a lot. So the best of the IE puzzles by far is the 4x4x3. That's for sure. I really, that one is still clunky, but it's eminently solvable, and I enjoy it a lot. For this one, the actual solve was really fun because I felt like a little bit cocky when I scrambled this. I thought, I'm mastering the Cuboids now. This should be easy. But actually, I had to mix up my strategy a fair bit because what I didn't really think about was my solving order in terms of what I was attempting to do wouldn't work for the tasks I needed to do on this puzzle. So to clarify that, essentially my initial strategy was, I looked at the puzzle and realized if I can reduce the 5x5 edges and all the top and bottom 5x5 centers, and then these get these side bars, 1x3 bars, all solved, then I could solve this as a reduced 3x3x4, right? Because these edges would function like a single edge piece, the corners work like corners, and the top and bottom centers would be like the centers on the top of a 3x3x5, so or 3x3x4 rather. And that turned out to be correct. However, I found that I ran into trouble when I needed to do the edges, right? Solving the edges on this is more complex than on a 4x4x n, right? Because we've now got 3 pieces on these 5x5 edges. And in order to get those solved, I ended up doing a lot of disruptive things to the centers, and I couldn't find a way around it. So what I worked out was that really I needed to be dealing with the side centers first, or these 1x3 bars rather first, then do the top bottom centers, and then things were okay after that. But yeah, it was just a little change up in the solving order, and then as is typical when you go up to a higher order puzzle, I did have to adjust some other elements of the strategy, dealing with the puzzle. But and then there was the typical cuboid algorithms to get me out of some parity situations, because you can end up in a situation where you have all your 5x5 edges solved except 2, and you need to do a swap of the centers on those 2 edges, but that was easy enough to resolve with a typical cuboid algorithm strategy. So it wasn't, super difficult, but I did enjoy that I had to mix up my approach a little bit. And I can see already, as with the other cuboids, that there would be multiple ways to approach this. Could do a layer by layer, as suggested by Jacobs Joe, which I'm looking forward to in the future. Probably not on this cube, because it's not my favorite, as I've said. But yeah, it's just a shame that it's not a better functioning puzzle, because it was enjoyable to solve. And if you can find a 5x5x4 that works well, I think you would probably enjoy it if you're into cuboids. But I wanted to update that it does in fact work enough to be solved now, scrambled and solved. But unfortunately, it's still just a badly made puzzle. It feels like it's really on the verge of collapse at any moment. And if I make it any looser than this, the turning improvements are immediately washed away by the fact that the puzzle starts just dropping pieces. The center pieces are really not that secure in their places. So if they're not being held together by a certain amount of friction, they just slide right out whenever you make a turn. So that's my update. Hope that was helpful to you. If you are looking to pick up any of these cuboids, honestly, all of them are really not that great in terms of turning, to be honest. If you're used to speed cubes, you will be probably disappointed by any of them. But all are pretty functional puzzles, except for this one. And unfortunately, this 2x3x4 did prove to have a bit of a shortcoming with that occasional lockup that happens. I'm a little bit mystified as to why that does occur, but I'll try to get to the bottom of it. So anyway, that's it for this little update. I got some other videos coming up that are not about cuboids, so look forward to those. In the meantime, as per usual, take care of yourselves. Hope you're getting ready to enjoy the winter break and the new year. And I'll see you soon in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.